He noticed her before he meant to. Not because she was trying to be noticed, she never had to. It was the way the afternoon light caught the edge of her hair, the calm assurance in the way she lifted her coffee, as though time itself moved slower around her. He was there to help his friend close up the gallery after the weekend show. Nothing special, just a favor. She had come in late, alone, asking to pick up a painting that hadn't sold. Her heels made a soft sound on the concrete floor, and when she spoke, her voice carried the warmth of someone who never needed to raise it to be heard. "Is it still here?" she asked. He turned. Their eyes met. Something in his chest shifted, the kind of recognition that shouldn't exist between strangers. She smiled, polite and measured. "The one with the river," she added. "Yeah," he said a little too quickly. "I'll get it." He disappeared into the storage room, heart doing things he couldn't explain. When he returned, she was closer, tracing her fingertips along the wooden frame of another painting, her rings catching the light. "You paint?" she asked without looking at him. He shook his head. "No, just help out sometimes." "Shame," she said softly. "You look like someone who sees things deeply." He laughed, or tried to. "You don't even know me." Now she looked at him. Really looked. Not yet. The words shouldn't have meant anything. But they did. They landed somewhere dangerous. She turned back to the painting, her perfume, subtle, amber-like, finding its way to him. He didn't move. Couldn't. The silence stretched, thick with something neither of them had named. When she reached for the painting, he stepped closer to help. Their hands brushed, a small, accidental thing, but it changed everything. Her fingers hesitated before pulling away. His breath did, too. "Sorry," he murmured. She smiled again, not amused this time, but aware. "Don't be." He wanted to say something else, but words felt useless. She studied the painting one last time, then glanced at the exit, as though deciding whether to leave or stay a moment longer. "Do you come here often?" he asked, instantly regretting how it sounded. Her eyes softened. "No, I try not to return to places I've already left." There was a story there. He could feel it, the kind you sense without being told. She turned toward the window, where the light was fading into gold. The city outside looked slower through the glass. He wanted to ask her name, but something about the quiet between them felt sacred, and breaking it would have been wrong. Finally, she spoke. "You're too young to look that curious." He smiled faintly. "You're too calm to notice." Her lips curved, but she didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, stopping just near him, close enough for him to feel the warmth of her shoulder through the air. For a moment, neither of them moved. It wasn't flirting. It was something else, like both were standing on the edge of a truth that couldn't be said aloud. Then, her phone vibrated on the counter. The sound broke the moment. She reached for it slowly, glanced at the screen, and exhaled, a small, private sigh. He didn't ask. She looked up again, eyes unreadable. "You should lock up soon," she said. "It's getting dark." He nodded. "Right." She started toward the door. Halfway there, she paused, turned back, and held his gaze, longer than she should have. "If you ever paint," she said softly, "don't forget this light." He didn't answer. He couldn't. The door opened, and the cool air rushed in. But just before she stepped out, her voice came again, quieter, almost a whisper. "Do you know what you're doing?" He looked at her. The answer caught somewhere between confession and surrender. "I can't help it anymore." The doorbell chimed as she left. And he stood there, watching the air where she'd been, wondering if he'd just crossed the first invisible line. He hadn't meant to see her again. That night, he'd told himself. It was a fleeting moment, the kind that burns bright and disappears before you can name it. But 3 days later, he saw her again, by accident, or something that only looked like one. The small grocery near his apartment. A quiet weekday evening. She was standing by the fruit section, reading the label of a bottle of wine as if the world outside the aisle didn't exist. He froze. She noticed him a moment later, or maybe she had the whole time. "Twice in 1 week," she said. "That's dangerous." He smiled. "Or just a coincidence." Her eyes flicked toward his, calm but amused. "Do you believe in coincidences?" He didn't answer. She didn't push. Instead, she placed the bottle in her basket and started walking toward the checkout. He followed, not meaning to, just drawn by the quiet rhythm of her presence. At the counter, she hesitated, then turned slightly. "You live around here, don't you?" "Yeah, 2 streets over." She nodded, paying for the wine. "Then you must know how loud it gets at night." He laughed softly. You get used to it. I never do, she said, taking the bag. Maybe I'm too used to silence. He wanted to ask what kind, the silence after a divorce. After someone leaves? After too many years of pretending it doesn't hurt? But her expression didn't invite questions. Outside, the evening air was cool. She stood under the faint glow of a street lamp, and he found himself stopping beside her, neither of them saying goodbye. I could walk you home, he offered. Her lips curved slightly. You don't even know where that is. He hesitated. Then maybe I could find out. She looked at him for a long second, that same still, assessing gaze from the gallery, then finally said, You really shouldn't. Why? Because, she said, adjusting the strap of her bag, you're friends with my son. The words landed like a quiet impact. He blinked, realizing. Elias, he murmured. He never mentioned. I don't imagine he would, she said softly. He hasn't talked about me much lately. Something about her tone, regret and distance intertwined, made his chest tighten. He'd known Elias for 2 years, mostly through music and late-night study sessions, never imagining the woman in the framed photo by the stairs would be her. She started walking. He matched her pace. I didn't mean to make things awkward, he said. You didn't. A pause. But it is. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was fragile, the kind that could shatter with a single careless word. At the corner, she stopped. This is me. Her townhouse stood behind a small garden, lights low, curtains drawn. She shifted the wine bag from one hand to the other, her ring catching the lamplight. I shouldn't have said anything, she murmured. Forget the coincidence. It's better that way. He nodded, but didn't move. Do you really want me to? Her eyes lifted to his. No, she said quietly. But I should. Neither stepped back. The air between them held too much, memory, temptation, and something unnamed that felt like recognition. As she turned toward the gate, her fingers brushed his, barely, like a thought. It was enough. She didn't look back. But he stayed there, hands still tingling, knowing this wasn't a coincidence anymore. It was a beginning neither of them could admit. The next time they saw each other, it was impossible to call it chance. Elias had invited him over, a small get-together before exams, nothing serious. A few friends, too much pizza, the usual noise. He hadn't known she'd be home. She appeared halfway through the evening, barefoot, wearing a dark sweater that slipped slightly off one shoulder. Her hair was loose this time, softer. She froze for just a second when she saw him standing by the kitchen counter, glass in hand. Then she smiled, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. Didn't realize you'd be here, she said. Neither did I. Elias laughed from the living room. Mom, you remember Aaron, right? She nodded lightly. Of course. Elias laughed from the living room. Mom, you remember Aaron, right? She nodded lightly. Of course. For a while, they stayed in separate spaces, her pretending to tidy up the counter, him pretending not to notice. But every few minutes, their eyes met, and each time felt like a silent confession neither of them had agreed to make. When the noise from the living room grew louder, she leaned toward him. Could you help me with something in the kitchen? He followed, pulse a little uneven. She opened a cabinet, reaching up for something on the top shelf. The glasses. They keep hiding from me, she said. He stepped closer, the scent of her hair catching him off guard. Here, he murmured, reaching past her. His arm brushed her shoulder, a small contact, but it felt like a storm. Her breath caught. Thank you. Their hands met on the same glass. Neither moved. He looked at her then, really looked. The soft lines around her mouth, the way her eyes flickered between composure and something more dangerous. This isn't, she began, voice barely above a whisper. Supposed to happen, he finished. She exhaled slowly, her hand still resting against his. You have no idea how complicated this is. I think I do. Outside, laughter erupted, Elias's voice somewhere in the mix. She flinched slightly, pulling her hand back as if burned. He wanted to step away, to make it easier for her. But he didn't. Neither did she. Her voice trembled, quiet and real. He thinks of you like a brother. I know. Then you know what we're risking. I know that too. For a moment, the air between them felt electric, charged, fragile. He didn't touch her. He just stood there, close enough to feel her heartbeat in the silence. A phone buzzed on the counter, Elias's name flashing across the screen. She picked it up, handed it to him. You should go join them, she said softly. He hesitated. And you? Her gaze dropped to the floor. I'll clean up. He turned toward the doorway, but before he left, she spoke again, low, careful. You make it very hard to be sensible, Aaron. He looked back. You make it impossible. Her lips parted, maybe to tell him to stop, maybe something else. But then footsteps approached. Elias appeared in the doorway, grin easily, unaware. Hey, you guys hiding the snacks in here? She stepped back instantly, brushing past Aaron to grab a bowl from the counter. Just cleaning up, she said quickly. Aaron forced a smile. Yeah, coming. Elias left as fast as he'd arrived. For a moment, silence again. Her hand trembled slightly as she set the bowl down. He noticed, and so did she. Their eyes met one last time. She whispered, not as a warning, but as a confession. You need to stop looking at me like that. He didn't. Outside, laughter continued, distant, unknowing. While inside, everything between them hung suspended, unresolved, one breath away from breaking. It had been weeks since that night in the kitchen. Weeks of pretending not to know too much, of keeping a straight face when Elias mentioned his mom in passing. Aaron told himself it was over, that the silence was a boundary, not a wound. But when she texted, "Can you stop by?" Elias forgot his notebook, the lie unraveled. It was late afternoon when he arrived. The house was quiet, curtains half-drawn, golden light spilling across the living room. She met him at the door, barefoot again, sweater sleeves pushed to her elbows. Thanks for coming, she said. He handed her the notebook. No problem. She took it, then hesitated, fingers tightening around the edge. You could stay a minute, she said. He's at the library. It wasn't a request. It was a risk wrapped in calm. He stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and rain. She must have just opened the windows. On the table, 2 untouched mugs sat beside a half-read book. I was just about to make tea, she said, moving toward the kettle. You still take it plain, right? He blinked. You remembered? Some things stick, she said quietly. He watched her pour the water, the way her hands shook just enough to betray her. She noticed his gaze, and for a second, neither of them looked away. You shouldn't keep looking at me like that, she murmured, echoing her own words from before. He exhaled, then stopped standing so close. She froze, kettle in hand, then set it down carefully. The silence that followed was unbearable, full of everything they hadn't said. I've tried, she whispered finally, to stop thinking about that night. About you. His heart kicked hard. And she laughed softly, the kind that broke before it began. And I can't. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. Then don't. Her breath caught. You don't understand. If Elias ever. He won't. Her eyes lifted to his, searching. You think that makes it right? No, he said. It just makes it real. The space between them dissolved, one slow, invisible inch at a time. She leaned back against the counter, but he was already there, his hand resting on the wood beside hers. Her hair brushed his fingers, soft and unintentional. She didn't move. He could feel her pulse in the air, in the way her voice trembled when she finally spoke. You shouldn't be here. Tell me to leave, he said quietly. She didn't. The clock ticked once, twice. The kettle began to hum, low and steady, like a warning. He reached up, barely, to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His knuckles grazed her skin. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, the smallest surrender. When she opened them, they were too close. Her whisper brushed his lips, not quite a touch. If you don't stop now. He didn't answer. The kettle shrieked suddenly, a sharp, burning sound that made them both flinch. She turned quickly, grabbing it, her back to him, breath uneven. He stood there, chest tight, watching the rise and fall of her shoulders. Finally, she said, voice barely holding steady, this can't keep happening. He took one step closer, his reflection flickering beside hers in the dark window. Then why are you shaking? She turned halfway, their faces inches apart, eyes locked, both of them on the edge of something irreversible. The silence stretched, fragile as glass. And just before either could speak, a key turned in the front door. Elias's voice called out, easy and unknowing. Mom? You home? The moment shattered, but the tremor it left behind didn't. Elias's voice came from the hallway, cheerful, unaware. Mom? Are you here? She froze, still holding the kettle midair. The sharp whistle had already stopped, but the silence it left behind was worse. Aaron stepped back quickly, running a hand through his hair like someone trying to erase the last minute. In here. she called. Too bright, too controlled. Elias appeared, backpack slung over one shoulder, grin easy. Hey, Aaron. Didn't know you were coming by. Aaron forced a smile. You left your notebook at mine. Thought I'd drop it off. Elias laughed. Man, you're a lifesaver. He grabbed the notebook off the counter, flipping through it without noticing the tremor in his mother's hand as she set the kettle down. Tea? She asked, voice slightly off. Elias shook his head. Nah, I'm meeting Tasha later. He turned toward Aaron. You coming tonight? We're all meeting at the cafe. Aaron hesitated, eyes flicking to her. She didn't look back. Yeah, he said finally. I'll be there. Cool. Elias started down the hall, humming under his breath. The front door clicked open, then shut. The house fell into silence again, the kind that exposes everything you tried to hide. She exhaled slowly, pressing her hand to her temple. That was close. He nodded, but something in her tone, the shaky relief, made him uneasy. You okay? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was lower. He heard us. He frowned. What? She turned, eyes sharp now. Last week, after the gallery night. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure. But he asked me about you. Out of nowhere. Aaron's chest tightened. What did you say? That you're a good kid. That's all. Her voice cracked slightly on kid, like the word didn't belong anymore. He ran a hand through his hair. So he knows something? He suspects. And now you're here, and I. She stopped herself, swallowing hard. I shouldn't have called you. You didn't just call me for the notebook. She looked away, but her silence said enough. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the clock filled the room, slow and deliberate. She turned toward the sink, gripping the counter like it was holding her upright. I've made mistakes before, she said softly. Ones that cost more than they should have. He stepped closer, voice careful. And this feels like one of them. Her eyes flicked up to meet his. That same wild, quiet honesty she tried to bury. It should, but it doesn't. Her breath hitched. No, it doesn't. He took another step, not touching her, just close enough for the air to thicken. Her hand brushed against his as she reached for a mug. The tremor in her fingers gave her away. Do you ever wish you hadn't met me? He asked. She let out a trembling laugh. Every day. Do you believe it when you say it? Her eyes glistened, not tears, just a truth she couldn't hide. No. Outside, a car door slammed. Elias's voice again, closer this time, shouting something about forgetting his wallet. She inhaled sharply, almost panicked. You have to go? Now. He hesitated. He can't see me leaving from here. He'll. Then through the back, she whispered, pushing open the side door. As he passed her, his sleeve brushed her arm. Neither meant to stop, but they did. The air between them pulsed. Danger, desire, and something that already felt like regret. I'll fix this, she said, her voice trembling. I'll make it right. He leaned close, enough for her breath to catch. You already broke it. Then he slipped out the back door, leaving her standing there. But he asked me about you. Out of nowhere. Aaron's chest tightened. What did you say? That you're a good kid. That's all. Her voice cracked slightly on kid, like the word didn't belong anymore. He ran a hand through his hair. So he knows something? He suspects. And now you're here, and I. She stopped herself, swallowing hard. I shouldn't have called you. You didn't just call me for the notebook. She looked away, but her silence said enough. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of the clock filled the room, slow and deliberate. She turned toward the sink, gripping the counter like it was holding her upright. I've made mistakes before, she said softly. Ones that cost more than they should have. He stepped closer, voice careful. And this feels like one of them. Her eyes flicked up to meet his. That same wild, quiet honesty she tried to bury. It should, but it doesn't. Her breath hitched. No, it doesn't. He took another step, not touching her, just close enough for the air to thicken. Her hand brushed against his as she reached for a mug. The tremor in her fingers gave her away. Do you ever wish you hadn't met me? He asked. She let out a trembling laugh. Every day. Do you believe it when you say it? Her eyes glistened, not tears, just a truth she couldn't hide. No. Outside, a car door slammed. Elias's voice again, closer this time, shouting something about forgetting his wallet. She inhaled sharply, almost panicked. You have to go? Now. He hesitated. He can't see me leaving from here. He'll. Then through the back, she whispered, pushing open the side door. As he passed her, his sleeve brushed her arm. Neither meant to stop, but they did. The air between them pulsed. Danger, desire, and something that already felt like regret. "I'll fix this," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll make it right." He leaned close, enough for her breath to catch. "You already broke it." Then he slipped out the back door, leaving her standing there, one hand on the frame, chest rising too fast, knowing this wasn't the end. It was the point of no return. The rain started just after midnight. Soft at first, then heavier, the kind that blurs everything outside into a trembling reflection. Aaron hadn't planned to come back. He told himself to let it end, to let her stay safe inside her silence. But the storm drew him there, the same way she always did, quietly, irresistibly. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised. "You shouldn't be here," she said, voice steady but eyes betraying her. "I know," he said, "but neither of us stopped last time." She stepped back slowly, letting him in. The lights were low, the room filled with the scent of rain and faint jasmine again. She had been reading the book lying open on the couch beside her. For a while, neither spoke. The clock ticked. The storm pressed against the windows. "Finally," she said, "Elias knows something's changed. He's been distant." Aaron's jaw tightened. "Because of me." "Because of us," she corrected quietly. "Because something between us stopped being innocent." He took a breath, every word measured. "Was it ever?" She turned toward him. "You think this is easy for me?" "No," he said. "I think it's killing you to want it." Her hand twitched, a small, involuntary tremor. "You shouldn't say that." "Why not?" he asked. "We've already thought it. Every time I see you. Every time you don't look away." The words hung between them like lightning, dangerous and beautiful. She closed the space slowly, one step, then another. "You're young," she whispered. "You'll forget me." He shook his head. "You don't forget the thing that wakes you up." Something in her broke then, the last thread of restraint snapping quietly. Her hand reached for the counter, but he was already there, close enough that her breath trembled against his throat. "This isn't right," she whispered. "Maybe not," he said. "But it's real." Her eyes closed. For a heartbeat. Neither moved. The air was thick with everything they'd avoided. The near touches, the silences that meant too much. When she spoke again, it was barely sound. "If I let this happen, there's no going back." He brushed a raindrop from her cheek. Or maybe it wasn't rain. "Then don't go back." She exhaled shakily, her forehead resting against his. Their breaths tangled. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just the quiet collapse of two people who'd run out of reasons. And then, softly, she said, "You don't understand what you're giving up." He smiled faintly. "You're wrong." "I do." The thunder rolled outside, low and deep. Her hand lifted to his chest, feeling the unsteady rhythm beneath. For a long moment, neither of them moved, suspended between what they wanted and what they feared. Finally, she pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "If we cross this line," she whispered, "I need you to know it's not a mistake. It's a choice." He nodded once, the smallest surrender. Outside, the wind howled against the glass. Inside, the world narrowed to breath and distance. Their eyes held, a wordless understanding passing between them, that they couldn't undo what had already begun, only decide how far to let it go. Then, a sound broke through the quiet. Her phone lit up on the table. "Elias." She looked at it, then at him. Neither moved. The rain fell harder, tracing lines down the window, like time, like consequence, and the space between them shimmered with everything that could still fall apart. And still, neither looked away. Morning came slow, pale, and forgiving. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the city washed and quiet. She stood by the window, wrapped in a soft sweater, watching the sunlight climb across the rooftops. The night still lingered in her mind, the words they'd spoken, the ones they hadn't. Somewhere between fear and surrender, something had shifted. Aaron stirred on the couch behind her. He hadn't slept much, neither of them had, but the silence between them no longer felt sharp. It felt gentle. "Morning," he said quietly. She turned, smiling in that small, uncertain way that meant she hadn't decided whether to regret or be grateful. "You didn't have to stay." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." Her eyes softened. "You shouldn't make promises you'll hate keeping." He sat up slowly, the blanket sliding from his shoulders. "I'm not promising forever," he said. "Just today." Something in her chest eased, like the world finally stopped demanding answers she didn't have. She moved closer, the floor cool beneath her bare feet. When she reached the couch, she hesitated, hand hovering near his. He met her halfway. Their fingers brushed, then folded together, simple and sure. For the first time, it didn't feel forbidden. It just was. She sat beside him, her shoulder brushing his arm. Elias still doesn't know, she said softly. I know, he answered. And maybe he shouldn't. Not yet. She nodded, eyes distant. It's strange. For years I thought I was done feeling this much. That kind of pull, that kind of risk, it belonged to younger people. He smiled faintly. Guess you were wrong. Her laugh was quiet, almost shy. I guess I was. The morning light found them then, slanting through the window, warming the space between their hands. She leaned her head against his shoulder, eyes closing for a moment. He let her. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Just breathed with her, the kind of closeness that didn't need to prove itself. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady again. You'll go back to school soon. Yeah. And we'll pretend this never happened. He shook his head slowly. No. We'll just stop pretending it wasn't real. Her breath hitched, not from sadness, but from something like relief. She turned to face him, eyes searching, gentle. You make things sound so simple. He smiled. Only because you make them worth the mess. She touched his cheek then, a light, lingering gesture, fingers, tracing the place where youth still met uncertainty. Then she leaned forward, pressing her lips softly to his forehead. Not a promise, not possession, just gratitude. When she pulled back, their eyes met, steady now. I don't know what will happen next, she whispered. Then let's find out, he said. Outside, the last drops of rain slid down the window pane, catching sunlight on their way to disappearing. Inside, their hands stayed joined. Two people no longer hiding, just breathing in the quiet truth of what they'd chosen. Did you enjoy the story? Would you like to hear more slow burn, emotionally charged love stories? Or something entirely different next time?